Ladies and gentlemen, the American Jury and Bulldog Nation, I hope you had a wonderful, happy Easter. I'd like to begin the show by wishing my daughter, Charlie Ann Fuller, a wonderful, happy birthday. She, of course, is the mother of 3 of the angels. Also, tonight, the NCAA finals between Baylor and Gonzaga. In this woke world of sports, folks, this is a game that's worth watching. It's college. And I don't know if you were lucky enough to watch the semifinals, especially the game between Gonzaga and UCLA, but what a game. So, in this day of sports that we're all boycotting and don't care about, like me, I don't care about pro sports anymore, but I have to admit I'm going to watch the finals. Gonzaga versus Baylor, it ought to be an epic battle. Major League Baseball. This story, since I last did my show on Friday, has just taken off in 16 different angles, and I would like to cover each one of them. First, do you believe the hypocrisy that Major League Baseball can move the All-Star game out of Atlanta? They don't know jack about what this law does. And you know what? The news reports say that this was done after the baseball commissioner consulted with the players' union. Didn't say anything about him consulting with the owners. I hope he's in trouble. Because you know what, folks? Georgia just wants to make sure that their elections have integrity with voter ID. And it's now been proven you have to have a driver's license to get baseball tickets at will call. And you know what? Here in Cincinnati, folks, I want a reporter. Mark Hansel, you call him. I'm being serious. I want you to call Castellini and ask the question, what do the Cincinnati Reds think about the All-Star game being moved out? We need to put our owner on the spot. Let's do it. Also, the Atlanta loss. This is irony of ironies. Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, which voted for Biden overwhelmingly. Of course, we also know why that was overwhelming, and we knew he'd win Atlanta anyway. They're going to lose, apparently, I don't know if it's $10 million, $100 million. It's an incredible amount of money that they're going to lose economically. I mean, and look at all the people who aren't going to make that money. The shops, the restaurateurs, the workers. Good job, Major League Baseball. Way to hurt Atlanta. And old Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden, they called for this. Barack Obama's applauded it. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. Then we find out, we know this, the Major League Baseball relationship with Communist China and all the deals they got going there. Everything China does on the human rights and voting and they're communist. It's a communist country. That's okay with Major League Baseball and the NBA. You see why the Bible says money is the root of all evil? Do you see? Root of all evil. New York, and Chuck Schumer says, oh, come to New York. Well, turns out that the New York voting laws are much harsher than Georgia's voting laws. How you like that, Chucky boy? Antitrust. The Republican senators, Cruz and Lee and some others, are saying maybe it's time to reevaluate the antitrust law with baseball. Do you think? It's long past that we evaluate the antitrust law with baseball. Then we have the Olympics. Do you see anybody protesting the Olympics? Being in communist China with all their issues? No. Last but not least, it boils down to the hypocrisy as it relates to voter ID. And you've seen the charts. Everything we have to show our driver's license for and prove who the hell we are, but not for voting. Crazy. Charles Barkley's comments. You know, I've said this. Our racial strife will end when more and more blacks speak out on the truth. What did Charles Barkley say over the weekend? And by the way, Charles Barkley is all about black power and all that. But you know what? He has some good stuff every once in a while. And this weekend, he was dead on. He said that it's time to stop the racial division that both parties generate. And you know what he also said? He said there's good blacks, good whites. You call them as you see them. Bingo! BARKLEY practices content of the character, not the color of their skin. And by the way, on that NCAA set, you've got Gray Gumbel, you got Kenny the Jet, and you have Charles Barkley. And you know what? I watch them and I sit there. I don't look at them like, well, these are black guys talking. I think, well, they're great basketball commentators. We're colorblind when we watch that show, are we not? Yes, we are. Thomas Sowell. Over the weekend on Saturday in particular, when I did my walking, I actually listened to Thomas Sowell's biography on tape. And I was blown away. I've always liked Thomas Sowell. And he said, I mean, there's so many tidbits, but there's one thing that he said. He's an economist. He's a sociologist. I mean, the guy is brilliant. Written. He believes in facts. A leading conservative black man. He says the number one rule in economics is scarcity. There's never enough for everybody. The number one rule is scarcity in economics. And then he says, you know what the number one rule in politics is? To forget about the number one rule in economics. I'm like, wow, the simplicity, the brilliance, and so true. Think about that. Politicians, they don't want to talk about scarcity. They want to come out, oh, everybody gets their cut of the pie. The socialism which never ends. I'm going to be talking more about Thomas Sowell. Then we got Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola comes out, like many of these other companies. We're going to have a list of companies that have come out against the Georgia voting law, and we need to have a little backlash on the best we can. True story, I actually got some Dr. Pepper this weekend instead of a Cherry Coke in my little small way of protesting Coke. But you know what? These guys don't know it's just part of the corporate culture where they knee-jerk reaction to it. And I think it's going to hurt them. There's going to be a lot of people. You know, my bottom line, I'll order a Mountain Dew over a Coke. I don't like Pepsi, but I'll order a Mountain Dew. Jim Acosta, CNN's clown. First he says that the only thing he wants out of this $2 trillion is Wi-Fi on his train from New York City to Washington, D.C. And then he talks about we're all suffering from some post-Trump stress disorder. I mean, this guy is a complete clown, and CNN keeps him around. You and I would have more credibility, more brains to be a reporter covering the White House than Acosta. I mean, it wouldn't even be close. Not even close. And they keep these people around. George Floyd's a trial going on. This struck me. There was an attack, I think it was in New York City, of a white man by a black man that was very brutal, almost killed the guy. And it struck me again, and I've said this before, but I'm using this as an example, is folks, you know, how Derek Chauvin treated George Floyd was wrong, regardless of the cause of death. We all believe that. We all know that. But you know what I'm just sick and tired of, and I'm sick and tired of all of it, is this. Since when does one person's death from the streets, some person's death is more important than another person's death? Why is George Floyd's death more important than all the blacks that get shot and killed every weekend in Chicago? The answer? It's not more important. And you know what? It's like the family wins the lottery because it happened to be at the death of a police officer. What about the deaths of people from whatever reason, from police officers, black police officers, white police officers? I, in my own personal experience, have told you the story about how a young man named Michael Godowa was shot in the back by an Officer Byrd, an Ellesmere bike cop. It didn't get any news, local, national, or otherwise. It's unbelievable. Michael Godowa's life, in fact, Michael Godowa's life was more valuable than George Floyd. You know why? Because Michael Godowa wasn't a crook. Michael Godowa had a bright future, was a good kid. I'm sick of it. They sit back and they cherry pick and they think, oh my God, look at this horrible event that happened. You're sick of it too. You just can't say anything like I do. China's plans. The Epic News came out. They've been featuring this every newspaper that they've been putting out every week. And they're talking about, and there's a Chinese insider that's been talking about it, how China's game plan is working to destroy America from within. Stealing technology, military buildup, weaken us from within, the whole woke thing. And by the way, I've decided all the craziness that's going on in this country in the last 2 years that's just sprung upon us, it has to be a intentional subversive effort. It makes no sense how Americans are falling to this. There has to be some foreign government, China, just they're in the middle of this some way, somehow. They stealing our technology. I mean, they truly, and my guess is they might be hooked up with North Korea, Iran, and Russia in their efforts. But China's got plans to destroy this country. And we're just sitting back and letting it happen. Hunter Biden, all these clips are coming out of Hunter Biden's memoir, his book that he wrote. And you can't make this up. Joe Biden, of course, said Hunter Biden is the smartest guy he knows. What does that say about Barack Obama, his entire cabinet, and everybody Joe Biden has ever hung out with from the U.S. Senate on? Hunter Biden is smarter than all of them. What does that tell you? And these clips and these stories that Hunter Biden is using to promote his book are off the charts. Snorting Parmesan cheese. I mean, on and on and on. Hunter Biden, the smartest man Joe Biden knows. The Parmesan cheese snorter. DeSantis. DeSantis was interviewed by Mark Levin yesterday, and I'm sitting there watching this guy, and I'm thinking, man, he says everything I'm saying. I mean, I don't follow all these people. I come to my own conclusions. But he's saying the right thing, the same thing I'm saying on every single issue. I mean, how Florida handled their voting. You know, they're not going to just barrage people with mail-in ballots. You know, you can get an absentee ballot, a legitimate absentee ballot. The election is over on election night by midnight. They know who won the election. I mean, everything on any issue, the COVID issue, the violence against cities. I mean, DeSantis, in my opinion, especially coming from the big state of Florida, if Trump doesn't run, I think DeSantis is the front runner in 2024. The border. You know, don't you get sick of Fauci's little smart-ass comments? He says, I don't understand. I don't have anything to do with the border. You know exactly what we're talking about, Fauci. If you're Mr. King of COVID warnings, how come you're not telling Joe Biden that you need to do something at the border because everyone who's coming in that's positive with COVID is the great super spreader event? Fauci goes, I don't know why people are bothering me, you know, giving me a hard time about what's going on the border. I don't have anything to do with what's going on the border. What a fraud. Different standards. Noah Green was a Farrakhan supporter, was a Muslim, and he jumps out and he kills a cop. How many cops were killed on January 6th? 1. How many cops were killed last week? 1. What's the difference in the news coverage? What's the difference in Joe Biden's comments and the Democrats' comments? What's the difference? We have a president of the United States and the Communist 10 who are in bed with our enemies across the board. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Iran, speaking of being in bed with enemies, they want to reopen up the conversations with Iran to do this nuclear deal. Now remember, we gave them billions in cash the last day Barack Obama was in office. Hope nobody's forgotten about that. But look what Iran does. Iran does nothing to show that they're going to change their ways. But yet there's old Barack Obama and John Kerry and the rest of them, boy, they're all going to just roll out the red carpet. Again, in the bed with the enemies. Why? Why? People talk about Manchurian candidates like it's some, mystical TV drama. Really? I don't know about that. Then we have COVID. Are you not just absolutely sick and tired of the phony BS coming from the COVID people? Oh my God, our government. I mean, the mask wearing, the vaccines. You get a vaccine, then you still could get COVID. You get 2 shots. It goes on. It never ends. Now they're telling us warnings and warnings and warnings. Wake up, folks. The COVID thing is never going to go away. They don't want it to go away. And the people drinking the Kool-Aid is off the charts. Antitrust monopoly. I'm going to do a special edition on that. So please stick around and watch that show too. Pete Buttigieg, he got busted riding an SUV on the way to a meeting. And then when he got close to the meeting, getting his bicycle out and then biking to the meeting. This is what the liberal swamp Democrats are all about. They're just phony assholes. YouTube, where this show is broadcasted, they manipulate things. If I say certain things, they do not allow us to do certain things relative to our show. They block it. Well, YouTube deleted 2.5 million dislikes relative to Joe Biden. Tell me that. What's different about that than a communist country? What's different about that? Absolutely nothing. By the way, DeSantis brought that up too. What I've been saying, that these companies have become part of our government. Tax hike. Joe Biden said over 400,000. Now he says up to 200,000. Folks, I want to tell you something. You talk to anybody that makes $200,000 a year, and you ask them about whether they can afford to fork out some more money in taxes. Folks, everybody's taxed too much. Rich, poor, young, old, medium, you name it. We pay too much taxes, period. Tax the power to destroy. Women's groups. Explain to me, again, part of the Communist 10, how women's groups in sports can support transgender folks participating in female sports. Really? They choose transgender unfairness over women being women in sports. By the way, this comes up. One of the reasons why I love the stereotypical conservative woman in this country is because they're not afraid to be a woman, show their femininity, be a strong woman, but they're not off the freaking ranch. They're not out in left freaking field. They get it. These commentary. Look at the women conservative commentators in this country and compare them to the Rachel Maddows. Who would you rather hang out with? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And by the way, somebody brought up, why does Rachel Maddow want to look like a man so much if she's all about women's rights? Just asking. I used to love Tracy Jones calling him Mr. Maddow. That got Trisha Mackey in trouble for calling him Mr. Maddow. John Boehner came out, took ripping at anybody and everybody. John Boehner was a tan golfing drunk who couldn't get us a bridge or anything else done here when he was the Speaker of the House. And he called them all a bunch of crazies. You know what, in 2010, you know what happened in 2010? What happened was Boehner got real conservatives elected. All these people like Jim Jordan and all the rest of them came to town, so to speak, and they said, we're going to change the way things are done. And John Boehner was like, wait a minute. That's not the way we do things in the swamp. And Boehner hated it. Boehner's more like Nancy Pelosi than Jim Jordan. Let that sink in. Matt Gaetz, I want to tell you something. I don't want it to be true. I really don't. Because Matt Gaetz was a defender of Trump, and they go after all the Trump people. But, and I said this publicly, Matt Gaetz looks like a frat boy to me. He does, just his whole style. And the more I read about the guy, the more I don't like him. I like the fact that he supports Trump. And again, I hope it's all not true. But he's clammed up recently. He came out with that strong statement about extortion, but now all this other stuff, and apparently there's enough reports to convince me that his Republican colleagues aren't very high on Matt Gaetz. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, I hope it's all not true, but if it is true, doesn't bother me at all. And you know what? If he's that freaking weird, let him go. John Brannon, UC's basketball coach. How screwed up is this that John Brannon is the head basketball coach of University of Cincinnati, a public college? He's now been suspended, and we don't know why. 6 players transfer. This big mystery. Is John Brannon a racist? What's going on? Is he too tough on him? Did he say something that wasn't woke? Why is John... You know what I predict? I mean, we have to speculate, right? They're not telling us anything. I speculate that John Brannon wasn't woke enough for the team. I'll bet you. And that's what got him in trouble. And that's also why they're not saying anything. They're not saying anything because that's the issue. That's what I predict. Last but not least, Godzilla vs. Kong. An awful movie. It was the box office darling this weekend, but I'm telling you right now, awful, awful movie. And you know what? Just like all those Hollywood Communist 10 movies, it's got the whole theme of liberal, 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 liberal. I won't give it away, the storyline, but it's so liberal it makes you want to puke. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. I will be the King Kong fighting the Godzilla of liberalism.